Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another week of the Better Events Podcast. This is Mary Davidson, one of your co hosts. And in today's episode, we are talking all about lessons learned in events and business in 2025. We do this episode every single year, but we share a lot of different lessons learned that we've compiled throughout the year. And we hope that there are tips and tricks that you learn from this and that you can also reflect on your lessons from 2025. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Better Events Podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events Podcast.
Hi, friend. Welcome back to season 6 of the Better Events Podcast. It is the year 2026, and we're in season 6. I cannot believe we've made it this far, but we have our structures still the same. Never fear, listeners. Our first thing is going to be our conversation starter. So I'm here with my co-host, Mary Davidson. And Mary, what is a fun thing that happened for you over the holiday break?
Yeah, over the break, we were in Zion National Park, which was fun. I am not a hiker. I don't like hiking. I don't necessarily think the view is worth the hike, but I love Zion. I've been there twice, but it's been like 10 years, and I just think it's beautiful. And so we had a good time, and it wasn't very crowded. And so yeah, I would say that was one of the good things. Logan, what about you?
Yeah, mine would also be, I'd say, a trip. I went back to the East Coast to Philly to visit family. And one of our Christmas traditions is that we run up to New York City and do a day where we run around and get last minute tickets, rush tickets, they're called, standing room only tickets to Broadway shows. And I had a lot of fun. I got to see one with Jonathan Groff, who is, as Mary reminded me earlier, the king from Hamilton. He was very good. And then the other one is based on a movie called Death Becomes Her. It was fabulous. I loved it so much. And my partner who went with me said, I might see it again. So that's like high praise for a Broadway musical. And they're coming on tour this year in 2026. So I'm excited to see if they're going to come to Seattle, because I would 1,000% go see it again.
That sounds amazing. I'm going to put it on my list. I've heard good things. All right. And we want to say before we get into our episode, thank you so much to everybody that attended and supported the 2025 Better Events Conference. We are officially done with it for 2025. We hosted the virtual day on October 1st, and the in-person day was just a few weeks ago in Seattle on December 18th. So make sure to stay tuned for our recap episode that will be coming out soon. And we will be back again this year in 2026 for the Better Events Conference. So stay tuned on that as well.
Do we need to start planning that now, Mary? You want to just jump into BepCon?
If we were good planners, we would be proactive in that. Yes.
We need a little mini break.
We need a break. But we are excited nonetheless. And we also are very excited for something else that we have coming up. Coming soon is our 5-part workshop series about how to start an event planning business. This is on demand. It's at your own pace. And this is because we constantly keep getting the same questions asked about how to start a business. And so we just made it a course. So you're welcome. And we're actually really excited. It's going to be valuable. I think we both wish this existed when we were starting ours. And so stay tuned on more information for that as well. So with all of those housekeeping notes, we are going to get into our topic for today. We do this every single year. It's a wonderful reflection episode. And we also, while we talk about our lessons learned, invite you to reflect on your lessons learned too. So feel free to learn from our experiences or not, but we're going to go ahead and get into it. So before we do, Logan, how would you briefly summarize your 2025?
A simple question, Mary, but feels complicated at the same time. Yeah, my 2025, I will say a lot of it was unexpected. And it was one that I definitely leaned more into the flexibility that comes with working for myself, as I had a lot of stuff going on in my personal life. Again, I've talked about it and it's going to come up in my other lessons, but just, yeah, it was a very grief heavy year for me in 2025. I also found this, Mary, probably one of the hardest years to like reflect on feel like I had a lot more tangible, specific lessons in years past. And this has just felt like a lot of stuff that's just hard to put into words. Um, so yeah, but I think it was like I went to ChatGPT to help me out with just a little bit of a summary of my year. And not from me, but from my friend Pixels, what I call my chat, was saying 2025 wasn't linear. It wasn't easy. It wasn't the most lucrative year I've ever had, but it was honest and human and clarifying. So that is, I know, I'm like, sometimes AI can be very profound, and summarize things that I feel like I'm not fully summarizing myself. But Mary, how about you? How would you summarize 2025?
I would probably say I don't love this word, but it's what's hitting right now. It, ultimatum. I feel like I gave myself a lot of ultimatums in 2025, which actually made a big difference in a way. And we're going to talk more about that, but that's the word that's coming to mind is just a lot of ultimatums. So yes, it was good, and yes, it was bad. The ultimatums came because I was like, this has to change or else. So that's what 2025 was kind of about.
I do love the show, The Ultimatum from Netflix. So, Mary, I can only imagine Mary's professional life on The Ultimatum would be epic.
Would it?
It would be. I would watch it.
Okay,
I'm intrigued. Put some business owners, give them an ultimatum. You got to hire someone or move on. I don't
Or
know, whatever it would be. All right. Well, listeners, yeah, you know and love this episode. I did, in preparation for this, go back and re-listen to our old ones from 2023 and all the way back to our first one we ever did in 2021. And it was enlightening, a little depressing because I definitely am relearning some same lessons again and again, but pretty relevant, I would say, if you ever want to go back and listen. But my first one, Mary, is an event lesson from 2025. This one's a practical one. Canva has this magical thing where you can now export a Canva design into PowerPoint, which is amazing for tech people out there everywhere. You're like, oh, can run it offline. We love that. But I will say my lesson learned is you always need to double check, because sometimes the fonts don't play nicely, and I couldn't tell you which ones do and don't and why it doesn't work on some slides and it does on the other. And it definitely does not export any videos or animations that you've done. So it is a function. This is something I've used with clients. We used it with the Better Events Conference, but there was some manual work that we had to go back in and reformat some things, because while Canva integrates with PowerPoint, it's not perfect. You still need to double check it.
That was great. And it's true. And we worked an event where we also found that was extra true. So yes, to everything that you said. Good lesson learned. You went the event route, so I will go that way as well. One of my lessons learned about events is that, well, events and business, I guess, you can make more money through change orders. So it's okay to offer things on at an additional cost after the fact if they come up. It's like a good sales tactic to keep in mind. So always be listening for a client saying something like, oh, well, we might need registration help. And if you offer that, you'd be like, oh, well, that's something that we could add on. So I did that a couple times this year because it was an easy fix. It solved their problem, and it also gave us more business, and we already were working with them. It was just a win-win situation. It's not a hard sell at all, but you can accomplish that through doing a change order. And that is something that I learned kind of this year, but also just actually put into practice. And before, I've just been thinking about it. So that was one of my lessons.
Nice, an organic way to grow your business. I love that. My next one's also an event lesson, but sure, maybe business, is backup plans are essential. And I know that's broad, but my specific subpoints would be always have backup batteries for your clicker, the gremlins, as I call them, which is just the universing. The gremlins might crop up and mess with your clicker, and fresh batteries usually solves it. Also, feel empowered to ask your AV team, when was the last time they put fresh batteries in that clicker? I always have 2 clickers. That's like a standard anywhere I go, but just always good to ask. Sometimes they'll tell you if they know. Sometimes if they don't, they might just swap them anyway for you. And another subpoint with that is backup plans are really useless if you don't share them with key people involved. Future you will thank you. So if you're the only person who knows what the backup plan is, it's not super helpful unless you actually talk it through with other people. An example of this is I always tell my speakers what's going to happen if the mic cuts out on them. If it only cuts for a second or two, just keep talking. If it cuts for longer than 10 seconds, my colleague is going to be running you a handheld mic from behind the stage. And I have not had to use it, but the fact that we know hopefully would cut down on that reaction time to something major happening. And I've had some clients who don't love that we talk about things going wrong, but I always say you don't want them to not know. And then they just look shocked. And then my last one is double check all your shipped materials have arrived. It's part of my backup plan because as a backup, always have some blank name badges with you. Plain white sticker ones. You can get them at any office store. I have now learned that lesson from a time when name badges didn't arrive. We thought they did because we just thought these boxes were them. No one opened them to confirm visually with their eyeballs they were in there. So give yourself some blank name badges and functionally you will thank you.
And now's a great time of year to go through all your supplies and order up what you need to stock up for sure. That's a great tip. And I hate going to an event and realizing like, oh my gosh, I have this, but I ran out and I don't have it and I need it, awful feeling. So now's a good time. All right. My next one is, and this is a lesson learned to me. If it is not true and you know otherwise and are listening to this, please let me know. But something that I think I learned is that you can't just go see an employee's email at any time. So if you have like a shared email system, I was under the impression that you can just like log in and go see their email, but the like Google Admin Console, for example, prevents you from doing that because you have the same like domain. And so it knows that like, oh, you're trying to go look at someone else's email. You can't do that. It's like a privacy restriction, even though I own everything. And so the way around that, because it is kind of your right and your property, is they have to give you permission. And so you can set up delegates, I think is what it's called. Logan, we've started doing this on some of our stuff. So that you can go in, and a delegate acts almost like an admin assistant where they can go in and respond to emails and do that. But you first have to like have them agree to that permission. So that was a lesson. I was like, oh crap, I definitely thought I could go into this inbox. And it was after an employee was gone and we set up email forwarding and all of that. So it was nothing suspicious, but I just wanted to go in and like clear it out and just make sure I didn't miss anything before I closed out the email, and I couldn't. So that was a lesson learned.
That's very good to know. Yeah, I feel like some of the Gmail features I'm not totally taking advantage of. So that's a really good one. My next one's an event lesson. Again, very specific from the production world. If you are paying for Wi-Fi or internet from the in-house AV provider, do a Wi-Fi speed test with an in-house representative present. And you can take the word Wi-Fi. You just need to do your internet speed test with a representative present. And Logan, it sounds like you're a little fired up about this. I am. Thank you for asking, universe. I think you're probably paying a boatload for Wi-Fi or internet, and we can get on our soapboxes about that. But what I want to make sure is that you are getting the speeds that they intended. What I'm finding is that most AV companies, in-house folks, are going to tell you that you have a lower connection on your proposal. So they'll say, okay, we're only going to promise you less, but then what in actuality they're pushing to you is higher, which is a good thing for you, but not if you don't know about it. So you just want to make sure that your on-site laptops connections are getting the speed they're pushing. I had a show back in 2025 in the fall where we were getting like 10 megabits up down, which is it's the minimum you need to do any kind of video conferencing. And what I found out later in a dispute that we had with the in-house folks was, oh no, I should have been getting 200. But in the contract with us, they'd only promised us 10. So then the blame got pushed back on us of saying, well, why didn't you say something? And my argument was like, well, what's in the contract? So now my solution to it all would have literally been solved if we'd all been present for the speed test. They said they tested it. They told us that it was good, but like we all weren't in the same room together. So make sure whoever is providing you the internet and yourself or whoever your key stakeholders are just present. Let's do a test to make sure you're getting what you think you're getting and what they're sending you is the right speed. Soapbox done. Sorry, Mary. Had to say it.
It was an amazing soapbox, Logan. Thank you. Wonderful lesson learned. All right. One of my next lessons learned are kind of still business related, but sometimes like more team related shifts a little bit. So one of the things is the idea of total ownership. And this is a concept that I've really tried to learn more about this year and have really tried to go all in on for our business and our team. And total ownership is just the idea that, you take total ownership over, for an example, the event that you're in charge of. And that means you're in charge of its success or its failure, no matter who else is involved. You need to be responsible for checking in on any anyone that's a part of it. And that is your responsibility to making sure it's successful. So it's that higher level of ownership. I don't know how else to explain it. Hopefully that makes sense. But it is a concept, and it's kind of like something that I think needs to be repeated so that folks don't forget and that I remember too. And so along with that though comes like me as the owner of a business, that also means that I have total ownership at the end of the day of if my team is successful. Like, am I giving them what they need to succeed? And so there's two parts to it. It's not just for people executing events, it's for managers at every level, I would say. And it's been cool to watch and see and implement, and I'm a huge fan. And so, yeah, I've been learning all about total ownership this year.
Again, great concept. I think it's all important about empowering your people. And I think that's a very intentional way to be doing that. My next one, again, still in the production world, guys, shouldn't be surprised at this point, I guess. But my next lesson learned this year is speaker support is crucial for larger shows, because the better your speaker feels, the better the show runs. And so I would say in some cases that means hire the stage manager, hire the show caller, schedule those rehearsals and or tech checks. My pro tip of tech checks always sound better to VIP speakers. Nobody wants to rehearse, but a tech check makes it sound a little more official, but it's both are the same. And then I think I told this to you, Mary, and you thought it was helpful. So I wanted to share on the pod. My rule of thumb for like rehearsal times, if you are building a rehearsal schedule with speakers and have never done so before, I would say generally a good rule of thumb is 15 minutes slots for speakers who don't want to practice their whole piece. They're just coming in and want the lay of the land, talking to a mic, check 1, 2, great, everything's good. Here's how I get on and off, and they're done. If you have anyone who wants to actually go word for word through what they're going to say, they need at least 1.5 times the length of what they're talking. So if they're talking for 10 minutes, they need at least a 25-minute rehearsal. And I would just round up to 30 to make it easy, because I've had a couple times this past year where people were like, oh, of course they want to rehearse everything. And I'm like, they have a 45-minute session and we have 30 minutes allocated. The math isn't mathing. So someone's going to get rushed. And in my philosophy is you don't want to rush the speaker, but unfortunately that's what happens if you have so many rehearsals back to back to back. So just think about your timing with your rehearsal schedule to make sure you're setting your speakers up for success.
That's awesome, Logan. It seems like rehearsals very rarely actually run on time. So that is a great tip.
Mary, I've had some really good ones this year or this past year in 2025, but I will also say I've had some really not good ones. And I say the schedule is honestly usually to blame. So I just want to emphasize to whoever's making these schedules. Think of us on-site folks.
Awesome. Good lesson learned. All right. My next one is to get to know your freaking financials. This was my biggest lesson learned of this year. I probably should have started here. My number one lesson learned, and I've talked about it a little bit before, but in January of 2025, so a year ago, I was like, we're going to figure this out. And this is where the ultimatum comes in. It's like, if we're going to keep doing this, we're going to figure this out. And it has been 2025 was the most successfully financial year, which, take it or leave it, that means so many different things. But I do believe it was because it was like that, this needs to change, and here's what we're going to do. And it was awesome to be able to see that actually pay off. So that, and I'm no financial expert, let me say that. But what I mean is I sat down and I really tried to understand, like, what's my cash inflow, my cash outflow, what are my actual expenses, and am I making enough every month? It was that kind of a review.
Probably not a fun review the first time you did it.
It was very depressing.
Yeah, but to our point about actually then having profitable event businesses, it's important. So I'm glad that's a lesson. I'm sure it's a lesson you'll continue to learn, but it's good that finances are there. My last one, and this is kind of like a hot take. We did hot takes at the conference, Mary, and I'm like, oh, this might have played well in the room in Seattle, but mine was reading the room is just as important as reading the run of show. And this is just something I'm seeing, like emotional intelligence, especially in the production space where I'm at, has like never been more important. If you're someone who's trying to get into the production world as a producer, a show caller, a stage manager, like you need to know the tech, sure. But also you need to know how to read people and understand the energies and the things they're bringing into the room and their needs, and like body language is really important, and just knowing like you're touching so many people with what you do, whether it's the client, the speakers, or your tech team. And if you're aware of how to kind of navigate that space, especially in stressful situations, which events tend to be for some of those folks on the list, but if you do this all the time, it's going to help you advance way faster if you're able to kind of connect with people, build that trust really quickly, build that understanding. So yeah, you got to be able to read that room just like you can read or run a show.
I think that's golden. That's a wonderful way to say it. Yeah. Keep that with you in 2026, Logan, because I feel like that's a good thing for other people to hear, when you're doing an event.
Got to say it a couple times, I bet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. All right. My next thing is to do the easy things right. And that's something that I heard another, like some podcaster person say. And it stuck with me because I think it's so true. The easy things like respond to your emails, be on time, which I'm still working on, okay? But it's the idea of doing the easy things right, because there's lots of hard things that we can do in events, in our careers, in our businesses. But what some of the smallest, easiest things really do make an impact, like just communicating efficiently and effectively, and those little things. So I've shared before, I think, was it last year or the year before, I lost business because I did not respond quick enough. And so I learned a hard lesson at that time. And that's when I started increasing my response times. And now I have to say this year I've been pretty stinking good at responding to my emails quickly, and I'm proud of it. So there you go.
We're proud of you too, Mary. Me and the listener listening to this pod right now. We're both giving you a little pat on the back. All right. My next one, I'm kind of shifting into business, is this year has taught me that grief comes with you to the job site, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And I had this note on my phone from April, Mary, that for context for folks, I lost my mother-in-law earlier in the year in 2025. And then I lost my grandfather later in the year in 2025. And my note from April, about a month after I lost her, I said, the number of places I've cried in public is embarrassing, but also freeing. I cried in a Starbucks. I cried in a dance class. I cried in an airport, and lots of rental cars. And so it's just one that, like, I listeners, I hope when you're hearing this, like I'm working through it, I'm processing it. It's just what it's like. It's just going to come up, and it's going to come up in really weird ways. And that was when I had to like be okay with expressing, like most recently, even my mom can attest to this. I cried at like our Christmas Eve service at church because they played Joy to the World, which my father loved, and we played at his service. So it's just like bubbled up at different times. And so I've definitely been grappling as I've been looking back at this year of just always wanting to be that highly motivated person, that going after the best revenue, the biggest goals, all the things, and just realizing that like this 2025 for me was a big slowdown. And that's been tough mentally to go with, but also understanding that I'm pretty sure my body and my nervous system and everything needed it. So if you are someone who's experiencing grief, if you hopefully haven't experienced grief, that's amazing, but just know it eventually probably will come, like for everybody, that, and this is something I want to have as a manager in my head when I'm on site and maybe farther from my grief, to just be cognizant of what other people are going through.
I think that's incredibly valuable. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Logan, especially because you can, is it empathize or sympathize with people when you've been through it before?
Empathize, yeah.
Empathize, which, like, when we are working at events, sometimes it's hard to remember that we're all human, but that is something now that you can bring when you work with other people too. So thank you for sharing. All right, my next one is sort of, I feel like I kind of said this, but in my lesson learned notes, which I take throughout the year, I wrote this again, so I'm going to say it a little differently because clearly I learned this lesson twice this year. And that was that in many cases, team problems are a leadership problem. And I think what I'm saying here is that we, as leaders, if you lead a team or you lead a business or you lead an event, I think we need to take more responsibility for making sure that the team is successful. And I kind of already talked about that. But I think there's a lot of power when we are like, okay, what can we do to improve this process for the team or make sure that, the team has everything that they need. And when we do that as leaders, things are going to be better. So that's one of my still lessons. I'm still learning. So if you're on my team and you're listening to this, I'm still learning this lesson, but I'm aware.
Hey, awareness is one of the steps.
Yeah.
I would like to think if anyone listening to this, if you are someone who manages someone, I hope you're as reflective as Mary is about some of her leadership practices, because I think that's where issues come up, is when leadership just thinks their way is the best way. Obviously, there's no room for improvement, and that's where I think friction comes. So that's a great one, Mary. My next one for a business lesson from 25 was tracking my nose was a game changer. So this was something that I tried for the first time this year. Is I have a note on my phone, and it just says my nose/losses from 2025. So this is where I wanted to track every project I said no to, meaning usually I said no because it overlapped with another date or it didn't work out. Just timing wise with other stuff I'd committed to. And then losses, meaning I'd like pitched for it, I put my name into it, and I didn't get it. And this was really helpful in seeing how many opportunities that I didn't take just kind of convinced me again how much work is out there, how much is available for me to go after in the future. It fights that scarcity mindset, because you can go back and I'm like, oh wow, I said no to 15 things. That's a lot of things. But also I was like, I'm happy with everything I did. So it just gives me confidence when I hear from clients being like, hey, we're not doing that event again next year. Instead of being like, oh no, I've lost something big for January. Now I had something to go back and look at and be like, oh, this one agency kind of reached out to me every couple months. I just need to remind them. I should probably reach out to them and just let them know, hey, here's my current availability. And it also gave me some good, like a visual of a confidence that I feel like I'm building in my gut when I like hear about a project, or I'm looking at it of like on paper, and my gut of being like, ooh, we'd love this. Or my gut being like, I'm not sure. Like it just gives me, when having that list, and it's just as simple as literally it was like one, I think I wrote the name of the event, maybe the location, who reached out to me, and maybe like a sentence about why I said no. So it was really simple. You could start doing this for your business. If you're a freelancer or a business owner, it was just really empowering in a way that I was worried it would be like a bit of a downer, but I will actually say it was empowering to go back and look at, to just see, like, I said yes to all these things, but also it's like, oh, I said no to some stuff, and that can be a good thing in a different way.
Thank you, Logan. That's a great lesson learned. All of these are great. And unfortunate that we have to learn them, but great. Both the things. All right. My next thing, I mentioned this on one episode before, but it's just that there are options out there for us. Like business aside, just like in your career, there's lots of different things that we can do, and I love that constant reminder. I shared that I got like recruited for an event manager role. And for anyone who knows me personally listening to this, I wasn't interested in taking it, but I wanted to hear what they had to say. And it's very like just it opened my mind again to say like we're not necessarily held to everything that we're doing right now. There are other things out there that we could perhaps pursue. And so that was just a nice reminder. And I decided, from that, I want to stick with what I'm doing. So never fear anyone who's listening. But it was a good exercise, I think, to just recheck myself and see if we like where we're at. And we do.
Oh, that's a good exercise. It is fun. I don't think I've gone through an actual interview process, but I definitely have like bookmarked some job descriptions where I'm like, or someone send it to me like, this sounds like it's up your alley. I'm like, ooh, it is. And it's more just to be like, am I doing those things that they list as responsibilities? Or even now in Washington State, all the salary information that's available, that's really helpful just to like gut check myself. So very interesting. All right. My last like big one, and then I have a couple quick hits, Mary. My last big lesson I will say from a business perspective is I feel like flexibility has been identified as my real business why, and not just growth for growth's sake. I'd been grappling with this in a different way earlier this year. I feel like I was just one of those of like, am I really that financially motivated? Is like, what is enough money? What does that even mean? So I feel like this is a strategic choice that's fit in with some of my past lessons that I've had to learn a few times, from burning out to, I feel like, overloading my schedule, where I've just noticed there's only so many like full production event projects I can take on, because those are like really heavy lift. They're very financially lucrative, which is awesome, but they like take a lot of time. And so there's only so many of those I can do. And so I'm going to be focusing, I think, in the new year of just like focusing on having more on-site events, but also still taking on some full production projects, but probably just putting a harder limit on myself for what I say yes to in that realm, and trying to go after a little bit more of the minimal pre-production, more on-site, just to help me find that balance. I've leaned more heavily into the full production one. So I'm just trying to recalibrate and see if having that split world a little bit better will be easier for me, because I really want to keep that flexibility that I've started to build for me and my business.
I love it. We can all probably be a little bit more flexible, so it's wonderful. Lesson learned. All right, my last one, and this is my last, so we'll do your quick hits after this, Logan, is the book, I guess. I just learned so many lessons from the book, Buy Back Your Time. I've mentioned it on here, I think, a couple times before, but it's basically a book if you're at a stage where you are trying to figure out how to scale your business and how to like delegate tasks and when it makes sense to delegate tasks and when you know if you can pay to delegate tasks. It's just a really, really wonderful book. And I learned so many things from it. It's one of those where I listened to it, took a bunch of notes, and I was like, I have to actually buy this one because it's going to be a resource forever. And so that is a book that I would recommend. Is that a lesson learned? Yeah, I think so.
I'd count it. I would.
Yeah.
My quick hit ones are just 3 of them right here. Very random, but these were in my brain when I was thinking lessons. Charge the extra 3% for credit card payments. One of my past lessons was feeling uncomfortable about payment terms and things. And I realized I do that. I write it in the email and I say, hey, let me know if you want to pay by credit card. If so, it adds a 3% transaction fee. No one's had a problem with it. Has everyone done the credit card payment? No. But that's actually helped me where I'm not losing 3% by having it unless I explicitly turn it on. My other quick hit was airline loyalty pays off, people. I have been a Delta diva for so long, and I got to fly in style on my last international trip, and it was all for free things because of upgrades for my loyalty. So double down on your airline, people. And my last one, Mary, is a philosophical one. This one came from an episode from a podcast called For Real and talking about leadership unlearnings. I'll link it here in the show notes. But it's just the concept that someone is always going to have a bigger boat. No matter what boat you get, it's a metaphor for life, people, but whatever boat you get, you'll probably always find somebody with a bigger boat. And that's when I'd written that down as like, it's like, that's just good to know when we compare ourselves so much in life. And those are our lessons, Mary.
That's great. Woo! Here's to the lessons learned and the many tears that learned them.
And we might have to relearn them again in the future.
And that's okay. I like doing this episode. I think it's a fun reflection. So, listeners, we hope that there are some lessons that you have learned either from us or from your own experiences or maybe both this year. So, thanks for sticking with us through this episode. And before we end, we have our bonus tip from Logan today.
Yes, my bonus tip is to use AI. I personally love ChatGPT to help you edit and identify gaps in your know before you go emails. So you're going to need to make edits. I would not say chat should make your know before you go. And you should do multiple rounds here. But we used it heavily for our conference, the Better Events Conference. And my favorite prompt, this got a giggle out of our crowd because I shared it there live too, was asking AI to pretend to be someone who's read none of our previous emails, which was hilarious because we know this is true. You've definitely done this for an event you've been to where you've ignored all other communication until the one right before the event. And just what questions they would have. And that information went at the top of the know before you go and more succinctly in this like morning of email that we sent. It was just a really easy way for us to identify accessibility gaps and questions that you might not be thinking of, especially for folks who maybe are neurodivergent or just different than you are. You might be like, this is an obvious thing, but chat was really helpful at identifying some questions that our potential attendees would have.
Great bonus tip, Logan. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Better Events Podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Better Events Pod. You can email us at bettereventspod@gmail.com. You can also connect with Logan and I directly on LinkedIn. We love to hear from you. Just let us know you heard about us here from the podcast. And if you want more Better Events content, you can always join our private community on Substack. Thank you so much for listening, and we will be back in your feeds again next Wednesday.